Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'll tell you some things to consider when buying your trike. First being the material of the frame, what speeds, tire size, and other miscellaneous stuff that could be on a new trike. Let's get to today's video. First thing to consider is wheel size. Wheel size isn't a really major factor in getting a trike. I mean, you get what you get, whatever brand, but the most common are 20, 24, and then 26. If you go for the 26 though, which I kind of lean towards, is due to the fact that tubes and tires have a bigger selection in that size, because traditional two-wheel bikes, that's pretty much the most common size of that bike. So tires and tubes are pretty easy to find for that size. This is a 24 inch. It's pretty good. I went down from what I had before, but I like that. But it doesn't really matter what size tire you get. Okay, the next thing to consider is the frame material and then the type of frame. I'll get to the type of frame here in a second, but frame material, you have two choices, aluminum or steel. Both will last a long time, but steel is obviously stronger because used in cars and everything. But aluminum is going to be slightly lighter. That's about it on the material. For frame type, you can get a permanent frame like this, so it's not going to fold. It stays one piece as is. You see it here. Or you can get a folding bike. Well, the folding bike will fold here. It'll have a quick release up here for the handlebars. Yada yada. Quick release wheel probably too. The reason, if you want a folding bike, that's one thing you have to consider when buying one. But the reason why I don't really like it, this is from personal experience, the folding mechanism broke on my bike. It was after probably 5 years, a pretty long time. But that mechanism will break. It's just a matter of time. Also depends on how often you fold it. So if you're going to fold it a lot, it will break sooner. If you don't fold it that often, it should last a pretty long time. So it all depends on how often you fold it, and also the quality of the folding mechanism. The trike I had with a folding go, so it's pretty up there, but times have changed, so I'm not sure how the folding bikes are now today. But the mechanism may fail one day. Just to consider that. And they are pretty convenient to load up in a car because they'll fit in smaller spots than this. Okay, the next thing to consider is speeds. Do you want speeds? Can you get away with a single speed? Or do you want speeds? The next question is how many you want. And also if you want a coaster brake. Because if you only want 3 or 5 speeds, you're going to get a coaster brake. I don't know why they put them on no speeds, but they do. 7 speed, you don't need a coaster brake. So if you want speeds and don't want a coaster brake, go for the 7. And you'll like all those gears anyways. You won't run out. At least in the mid tier. And another thing to consider is single speeds. Use a different chain than the multi-speeds. And that chain won't last as long because there's more torque if you use the high gears on the 7-speed than you do the single speed. And the single speed will last longer. a little bit less maintenance on the single speed than the 7. More can go wrong on a 7 speed. I had an issue with this and I had to have the whole thing replaced. So there's issues that come with it. If you keep it maintained, you might avoid them. But yeah, and yet the in between speeds, if you like coaster brakes, there are 3 and 5. Those are the speeds. Okay, a few things other than the major components to consider is if you want a parking brake, like I have on this bike. Actually, I'm going to show you this side. If you want a parking brake so the bike don't move, some bikes don't, or some trikes don't have parking brakes. So the parking brake will look like that. All it is a pin that keeps the brake in the brake position. Operator, you just do that. So if you want a parking brake, you're going to have to look at the handlebars. Another thing to consider is some trikes only have a front brake. So that's the front brake. And they don't have a rear brake. And sometimes the rear brake is swapped for a coaster brake. That's another thing to consider. Next thing is not so much the rear fenders or front fenders, but if you want fenders, which they say to help keep splashback from you, I don't really see the need for fenders, but if you want fenders, that's another thing to consider. And most of the time, if a trike doesn't come with fenders, usually you can order them from the manufacturer at whatever price they're charging for them. This particular bike, the Sun, the fenders cost 50 bucks for a pair. And that brings me to my next point, is the seat. The seat isn't really that big a deal. If you don't like the seat that's on it, you could always change it. But if you want to eliminate the things you change, you look for a seat that you like. And most trikes come with a basket. This is a modified basket, so it's not the same as what comes on the bike, but the size of the basket could vary. Okay, the last thing to consider is, do you want pedal assist? And this is not really an electric bike buying guide really, it's more for the basic non-electric version. But you can get electric trikes, and most of what I've seen, they use a front hub motor. I don't really see many mid-drive trikes, but most of the time it's going to be pedal assist, which means when you're pedaling, the motor will spin a little bit, helping you. And there's a few out there that you can do throttle only. So you twist, I think, it's either a button over here, I'm not sure how the electric ones work, but there's a throttle and you can adjust how fast you're going. And the next thing is you have a reverse. Most of the time it will be 2 buttons you have to press to get the reverse. But you'll have a reverse, and very few also have a walking mode. So there's a button, and it'll go really slow, help you pull the trike, which is a little heavy. So that's another thing to consider. But if you get the electric trike, be prepared to spend some money, because they are not cheap. This bike, without the 7-speed, it'll be a single speed electric. I think they're on Sun's website, it's $1,100, I think, $1,100 or $1,200. So they're not cheap. So that's another thing to consider. So, and it does make it easier to ride, obviously, because it's electric and you don't have to pedal as much. something to consider. The last and final thing to consider is price, which all the features that you might want, you're going to be paying for. So obviously the more, just most trikes with a single speed are about 300 bucks. They're not 300 bucks, like 350 the Schwinn. And the single speed version of this I think is like around 400. So at $300 to $400 range, you're looking at a 6-speed or at a single speed, and then the 7-speed will be an additional $150 to $200. So price is the last thing to consider. But other than that, if you want to know what this bike is, it's a San Traditional. It is the 7-speed. And I've done a few modifications to it, but that's my trike. I like every bit of it, especially the 7-speed. If you have a single speed and you go to a 7-speed, you don't want to go back. Trust me, just go out and ride a 7-speed. You'll love it for the down gearing to go up hills. And then when you're in the flats, you can up gear to gear 7 to go somewhat fast. I average probably 8 to 10 in 7th gear. I can get it up to 12 and maintain it. But 7-speed is probably the best option to get on the trike. So that'll do it for today's video. If you like today's video, give it a like. And if you like the content I'm posting, you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on my future video. And see you in the next one. Bye.